Hi, and welcome to the Red Tunic podcast, a podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. My name is Link, and today I'm joined by Joseph Gribbin, an indie developer that has worked on such games as Magnibox, Undead 2, Spike City, and most recently Grapple Dog, a platformer based around using your grapple hook to swing, bounce, and roll through a myriad of colorful levels and unique environments. Hi, Joseph. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, that's great here, and no, you are very welcome. The privilege is all mine. So thank you so much for making the time to talk with me.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, no, it's really great to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you again. So Joseph, for those that don't know who you are, do you mind maybe telling us about a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah. So I'm an artist and game designer based in London, UK. I'm currently working on a game called Grapple Dog, which is a platformer, like you said, for Steam. And previously, I worked on a couple of mobile games. And then before that, I worked at Nitrome doing mobile games there, doing stuff like Rust Bucket, Turn Undead, and I did Spike City, Magnibox, some as part of the team, some as kind of solo developer. Yeah, um, that's the work I've done. Yeah, I'm working on a new thing at the moment.
Awesome, and thank you so much for sharing that. And based on, or sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself there. Can you maybe talk about how you got into developing and making games? Because you mentioned that you're an artist and game designer, so I imagine there's a little bit of, interesting how you got into both of those areas.
Well, yeah, I call myself an artist and a game designer. Like as a developer, I have to do, as a really small developer, I have to do like lots of different jobs, but I have to do a lot of programming, but I'm not very good at it, so I don't call myself a programmer. Um, yeah, basically, I started as an artist. I always liked to draw from a really young age and liked making visual art. And then I think I was started really young. It was pixel art that kind of like really got me into game development because I would go on the Sprite as Resource, which is a really great website where they kind of like rip the graphics uh, from like pixel art based games, sprite based games. And I'd go on there and I would kind of like edit the sprites in Microsoft Paint and stuff like that, and recolor all the Sonic sprites to do original characters and all that. And it was like, yeah, at that point it was like I could make something that looked like what was on my Game Boy, and that was really like exciting to me to be able to do that. So I started doing pixel art. I got a bit known for that. I worked at a couple of studios as a pixel artist. But then I also kind of, started playing with Game Maker, and just, trying to make my own stuff for years and years and years. And then just slowly and slowly I got better at it. Um, and now I'm at the point where I kind of like do all the pixel art for my own projects, and I'm kind of programming them and doing the game design for them. And yeah, that's sort of how I got into it. So I sort of started as an artist and then kind of like just started making my own stuff.
And thank you for sharing that. And there is something I want to add on to, or not really add on to, comment on. Was your statement of you don't call yourself a developer because you're because what have you. Um,
Yeah.
as someone who has been developing for several years, I can say that that is a shared feeling. Um, I well, I'm not developing games. Um, I still struggle to say I'm a programmer, if only because I know the quality of my work, despite what other people might say. I know the quality of my work, and I refuse to. I don't like really saying I'm a programmer. Um, to
Yeah,
to to a lot of people.
I feel kind of like uncomfortable with it, uh, just because and particularly when because I've worked in studios in the past when you work with programmers, um, and they're just much better at it than me, and y- y- you know, I run like if you actually work with me, I'm actually not very good with computers for a game developer. I don't really understand how a lot of them work. Um, so I always feel self-conscious about that. But I guess, I have shipped 2 games at this point that I have programmed, and I'm close to shipping a 3rd game. I don't know when I'm gonna reach the point where I'm like, "No, I am a programmer."
I will say that imposter syndrome for all fields. I don't want to single this one out to be programming, but imposter syndrome can be a real pain to deal with, and
Yeah.
I wish you the best of luck for navigating it. And I say that sincerely as someone that suffers from it and will likely continue to suffer from it. Uh, but I sincerely hope you are able to figure out how to navigate around it, because there is a point, and I can say this confidently, there is a point where you will look at what you are doing and compare it to what you've done and realize how much improvement you've actually made.
Mm,
And there's also a point where you will look at what other people have done and realize that even at your worst, you are still competent.
yeah.
So I
Yeah,
I, I don't know if that helps to be told that. However, I hope in some way, shape, or form that helps to be told that.
no, it's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And I think, like, as an artist, I don't necessarily feel that, um, "Am I an artist?" anymore. I also think, like, I definitely have those feelings of, like, imposter syndrome and stuff like that, but I definitely, um over the past couple of years, I noticed that, if you start to kind of push that on yourself, that sense of like, I'm not supposed to be in this room, I'm not good enough, um, then, other people will then push that on you, like on top. Like you walk in, you go, "Oh, I'm not very good at this," and then people will go, "All right, well then you deserve to be paid this," right? And one of the ways that I kind of deal with that is to just barrel in and be like, "Right, I don't care if I'm any good at this. um, but I'm gonna do it," and that's how I push through.
Joseph, I the way you put that makes a lot of sense, to have that confidence. And everything you said there makes a lot of sense, because it's kind of about the energy that you put into it. And if other people pick up on that energy, you could potentially be at a position, like you said, to be exploited, and in this case underpaid, right? um
Yeah,
but
I think it's not always like, I'm not saying like it's just an attitude problem. There are like structural issues with the way that people are treated, but like, I think just personally, I've noticed that when you kind of go in with that attitude of like, oh, maybe I'm not very good. Um, y- People aren't nice sometimes, and just yeah,
No, and like I said, I get what you're saying, and I thank you for putting it that way, because sometimes it is just a matter of confidence, or um I don't know how to put this appropriately, so forgive the maybe not exactly correct way, but just not caring if you are good enough to be at the table, because you're at the table, right? Like, if you're already at the table, at some degree, you just have to not care if you belong at the table, because someone has put you there, and you might as well act like you belong. If that makes sense, because
yeah.
I'm grasping at that case, but if that makes any sense.
I think that's. I think it's true. I mean, in the sense that games are creative, right? They're a creative field, um, and I just have the attitude that everybody has the right to make something. Everybody has the right to be creative in that way. Um, Whether that applies to having a job at a company or whatever, I don't know whether just barreling in like that is the right thing. But like, um, I think about it as in like the suppose that you don't know what you're doing and you barrel in and you mess everything up, and the worst thing you've done is put more art out there in the world and made something, and that's not a failure to me. That's you've contributed to art and creativity in some way.
Yes, I understand completely what you're saying. And I appreciate the very positive outlook that you have with that. I'm more of a negative person, and I never would have thought of it that way. But thank you, because uh, that is a nice way to shift things, to shift the focus on, instead of looking at it like you said, going, oh, this failed, nothing happened, um, or let's say like you're working on a game and it doesn't really get legs, but like you said, you've done all this like concept art or what have you.
Mm.
At the very least, you just made a bunch of art, right? Like
Yeah,
that's a bit, so that's a very positive and good way to look at it. So thank you for that, because like I said, I personally would never have thought of it that way, and
yeah.
what you just said is fantastic. So thank you so much.
I think it is important, like, because I think a lot of developers, particularly in the, very, very small developers or solo developers or micro developers or whatever, like, there is a struggle to kind of like get discovered and struggle to kind of like get news of your game out there. And, I know a lot of people that have released, they're really talented and they've released really, really great games and they just don't find that audience. And it's, you know, like everybody hopes that their game sells really well and they can make a load of money and be really successful, hopefully. Um, but then it's like, yeah, if you've made something, that's incredible. If you've made something, that's a feat in itself. Like every game that gets shipped, every game that gets made is just incredible. And it's yeah, and and I've had it where you put a game out and then it doesn't do what you wanted it to do, and that's my way of kind of coping with it. Is just kind of going like, no, I made something there.
Yes, entirely. And I don't think I just want to say I don't know if coping is the right word, only because it almost like, to me it almost sounds like you're diminishing what you've done. And it's what, and when I say that, I mean, like, you should, you kind of danced around it, and it's, I'm going to say it explicitly, but like, it takes a lot of work to go from sitting down writing what you want to make for a video game and releasing that game,
Yeah.
or anything really, right? But like, you should always be proud, regardless of quality,
Mhm.
regardless of success, regardless of all of that other stuff. You should be proud that you were, and this is not just targeted at you, but you should be proud that you set out to do something and you took something through to completion.
Mm.
Because there's, like, sometimes some things are really easy to do and some things are really difficult to do, but at the very least you should always be proud of what you complete, because in today's world especially, starting out to do something and not finishing it is much easier. It's easier to give up than it is to persevere. And I think just being able to, you should always be proud that you've completed something, regardless of, like I said, as of success or what have you. If
Yeah.
any of that makes sense.
I mean, there's the kind of spiritual, philosophical sense. Yes, you should be proud, but also it's like great for your CV to have finished stuff on there. That's just good advice for like people, looking to get jobs in the industry. It's like finishing stuff is really good for that. I will say there is value in you know just not finishing stuff sometimes. I think sometimes it's a balance. I think sometimes people place a bit too much emphasis on kind of like you must finish. I think one thing that's really important to me because is like I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. You have to enjoy the process. You have to enjoy the process of making stuff, right? And you have to learn that first before you kind of like learn to finish things. Because whether you finish or not, or how far you get, or whatever, as long as you are enjoying the process and kind of like challenging yourself and learning things, and um, you know, that's going to carry you through, and that's going to carry you through failure and success and ups and downs and everything.
Yeah, and thank you, because that also makes a lot of sense. Now, Joseph, based on all of this, because we've kind of danced around a few things. implicitly talked about a few things, or at least I feel we have. But based on your experiences, do you have any advice for those seeking to get into the industry?
Um, yeah. I always feel bad because to offer career advice because my career is not had a straight line, a really great path to it. Like I got studio work, and then I left studios, and then I've kind of struggled to find work over the last couple of years because my skill set is like um, not super in demand in terms of pixel art, in terms of um, so I mostly use Game Maker Studio. Uh, I guess my advice, yeah, would just be what I said. Learn to enjoy the process, learn to finish work that you started. That always looks great on people's CVs. Um, don't bet on your first game being successful. I think we dance around that, but yeah, there's no guarantee that you're going to make any money. Um, be safe. Don't quit your day job. Don't max out credit cards. Um, yeah, that, that's all the advice I got.
And thank you so much for that. And I don't. There's something you had said. It was how your path was kind of all over the place, and you didn't know if you had advice to give, or you don't really know how to, give that advice. But the reason I like asking that question is because not everyone has the same entry into making games, or parts of games, or what have you. And any direction, any advice I feel personally is always valid, because not everyone has the same path, and not everyone will have the same path. And I feel that some people will be able to resonate with certain people and how they got from point A to point B, and their story might match up more with someone else's, and someone might match up with more with yours. So I just want to thank you for the direction and the advice that you gave, because I personally feel that all advice in this frame is always going to be valid. So thank you so much for sharing that.
No worries. Yeah, I struggle with it because I mean I used to pre-pandemic go to the London indie space. Um, yeah, and there'd be a lot of students there and uh, a lot of people that worked in different industries that had maybe graduated but wanted to get into the games industry, etc. And I never really knew what to say when they were like, "Well, you work in the games industry," and it's like, ah, you know. I think the idea that I've been working in the games industry for like 6 or 7 years now, like, and that I have that experience is still kind of sits uncomfortably with me, and I don't. Maybe I'm just anxiety about getting older. I think.
I can relate to that. Because personally for me, as I said, I'm a programmer, and for me, the way I got into my current job was a lot of, how do I put this? Was a lot of me not caring. And I say that in the sense of, I had a lot of, I already had a job, and a friend, for the company he works for, he was really suggesting I apply. And I just applied, right? I was like, well, I already have a good job, whatever happens happens. And it was just a series of events of that basically just surmounted to luck and the confidence of me having the other job. So like, I didn't get as nervous. Now, none of what I just said is something I can share as advice for other people looking to get into it, outside
Yeah,
of having the confidence, I guess. Because when you have that confidence, people, if you don't look nervous all the time, people, correctly or incorrectly, assume that you're a confident person in general, right? But you know, I'm sure at some point I will run into someone, and how I got from point A to point B might actually be in some way useful. So it's, it's like, no matter, like I said, no matter what, I think just the journey to get there, someone
Mm.
is going to appreciate it. And I understand that, like, myself as well. You can be always anxious about that journey, but
Yeah,
the way that I look at it is, there's someone that's just starting out, and they're going to be just as anxious. Well, I don't want to say just, they're going to be even more anxious, right? Because they don't have that experience, or they're looking to switch careers, or they're just generally really, I don't want to say lost, but it's overwhelmed, right? So
yeah,
just, I and I want to be careful of how I say this, because I don't I'm just going to say it this way, and I don't mean any insult by it, offense. But like, not everyone's path is going to be like 100% successful. Like you said, you don't
yeah,
want to plan on that first game being, a smash hit that just breaks out and leaves you as like a millionaire or whatever, right?
yeah.
Because
Although that
statistically,
that would be really, really nice. I could really use that right now.
I think, yes, I hope for the best for you with Grapple Dog, and I hope that works out for you. Um, but like, I agree, like, it's statistically, that's a much lower chance of something to happen. Um, and hearing hearing that someone else is, that they had the struggle, that they had, a twisted path as well. I think that paints a good picture for other people that might be nervous as well, to think, they're going to get out there and it's going to be roses, and rarely that's the case, and rarely that's just the case. Um, but yeah, so just to not risk going down a weird, dark, and potentially spiritual and or philosophical debate on all of this stuff,
Yeah, we're
uh,
getting pretty deep. I mean, yeah.
uh, or go further into it.
Oh,
Joseph, let's go back a little to when you were younger.
yes.
And what was your favorite game as a child, or when you were younger, and why was that your favorite game?
Um, right. I'm trying to think. I played lots. I always play a lot of games. I think so. So we had a PlayStation. We were a
Mhm.
PlayStation family, and I loved Spyro the Dragon. That was my favorite on the PlayStation. Um, I think my favorite, like as a kid, was I had a Game Boy and I played Legend of Zelda: Oracle of Seasons, which was kind of like my first entry point into kind of Nintendo and Zelda. And just after that, I was just like 100% huge, huge Zelda fan. And I played everything that I could get my hands on. Um, yeah, I ended up getting a GameCube just so I could get Wind Waker because I remember like all the magazine previews at the time were like um, because we everybody thought it would be like a really realistic new Zelda game, because they showed off that kind of Space World demo. And I remember just like this game magazine coming in, and it was like Link had this big head. Um, yeah, it was Zelda for me. Like as a kid, that was like an absolute favorite. I love those games. Yeah, and I still like to this day. And I know it's nostalgia, but still to this day, I'm just like Oracle of Seasons is one of the best. It's one of the better ones.
So, sorry, I was trying to think of how to follow up with that. Not because you didn't say some, didn't not because you didn't say anything that I can follow up with. It's just how I phrase it. Um, so I can definitely relate to experiencing the magic of Zelda for the first time and being completely enamored by it.
Yeah.
For me personally, I I remember watching my sitter playing the first Zelda game, and
Wow.
watching as she went through like the screens and did some of the secrets and stuff. And to this day, I still have vivid memories of watching her hit those secrets, push those secret blocks to get to the stores or whatever. I still don't remember what screens those were on, so I will still, every time I see a screen that seems familiar, I'll just try everything. And, that's probably not the best approach, especially because Zelda is incredibly old and I should have that down pat by now. But anyway, uh, can you share what it was about Oracle of Seasons? I believe you said not ages, correct?
Yeah, not ages. Gosh.
can you, can you share what you think it was about Oracle of Seasons that did it for you? Because the Link's Awakening, Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, all of those were stellar Zelda games, and I'm wondering if you can just elaborate or expand on what it was for Seasons that did it for you.
So, well, firstly, I just want to say there's something really funny to me about the idea of somebody who like loves Oracle of Seasons and just hates Oracle of Ages. Just like, no, get it away from me. Um, I don't know what it was about that game, but you gotta understand as like now as a very dorky adult, like every series, I will go on Wikipedia and read the full summary of kind of like, oh, so this is where it sits in the timeline and whatever. Um, when I was a kid, I didn't have any idea. Like, I literally, you know, the Game Boy was like the Pokemon machine, uh, right? That's what we bought it for in our family was like playing Pokemon Red and Blue because that was like the trend. And then I think I just picked up Oracle of Seasons on the shelf and I just fell in love with it. And I didn't know about Link's Awakening for years and years. I only really I think played that on the 3DS like years later. I did play Seasons at the time because, like, I'd read that it worked like Pokemon, where there was like a red one and a blue one. I don't know what it was about Seasons, but just something about like that there was this whole world in there, right? This magical kingdom, and that this adventure was like it was like an epic adventure, with a beginning and an end, and fantasy nonsense and whatever. And I don't know, I just really loved it. I, I do think it was kind of like it was the jumping off point for me because after that I kind of I got Wind Waker. I remember I got Wind Waker, but over here I don't know whether this was the case in like other regions, but over here it was packaged with like Ocarina of Time, um, which I'd never played because I never had an N64. And I just remember like I played Wind Waker for like an hour, and I'm not disparaging that game. It's a great game, but like I was just glued to Ocarina of Time. That game just blew my mind. You know, it's something about the kind of like epic scale of Zelda that I really enjoy, and the kind of intricate design of the puzzles, um, and just the really appealing characters. And then it feels like this grand adventure where you kind of like meet all these fun people and go and save the world. I really love it.
Yes, I 100% understand what you were saying as, someone that is a fan of Zelda. Uh Obviously. Um but I get exactly where you're coming from, and, for me, I've always liked Zelda, but for me, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask were the the moments that I booted up the game and felt or realized what a game could be like. And I know what I'm saying is it's like a very vague statement to make, but I'm very confident though that what I'm saying is you understand what I'm saying,
Yeah,
and I'm fairly confident that anyone that listens would also understand what I'm saying. But it's that moment of booting it up and realizing, you know, it's you can see something in the distance, and with I think what Zelda did, the 64 games especially did so well, was implementing like the draw distance the way they did with the fog and such, that you could always tell there was something out further, and it
yeah.
it did an amazing job of making you want to see what was out further, to go that extra step just to see it, you know?
I think it's also um, what I really liked about them was that they were kind of like they had They all had, beginnings where you were like a little farm boy, or you were, you're in the Kokiri forest, or you kind of like, I think in Majora's Mask, you're like the Deku Scrub, and you start off and you kind of like in this small little village or whatever, and then the world kind of unfolds itself over the course of the game. And as you discover more and more, you kind of like you travel distant lands and stuff like that, and then it all leads into a big showdown at the end, right? And then whenever you got a new Zelda game, it's a bit like buying a novel, or watching a film where there's kind of like a beginning and end of authored content and action and adventure and combat and all that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be like old man yells at clouds, but yeah, like these days, with all the service driven stuff, and even with kind of Breath of the Wild, there's less of that sense of like, the developers have made something for you to enjoy, and it has a beginning and it has an end, right? Um, there's more this sense of like service driven stuff, or open world games where it's kind of like go wherever you want, man, it's up to you. Um, and there's something I really miss about the Ocarina Majora era of Zelda games, where it was like, where am I going to go in this one? What kind of wild environments are there going to be?
Yes, exactly. I know exactly what you're saying, and I think the best way to put it is, in my mind, I think the best way to put it is those in the past they would curate your journey. They would steer you through, and they would give you what they wanted you to get. And there was enough stuff you could do on the side to maybe learn some other things or do some other things, but ultimately you went from A, B, C, and there could be like B1, B2, B3 or whatever along the way. Whereas, more recent games, Breath of the Wild for example, they did a lot of, well, the world's open. You find what you want to do. You find this and go from there. When, if you really liked the old format where it felt like they were sending you in the direction that they wanted you to see things and experience things, that, that's if that's what you really liked, that is a very different approach to
Yeah.
current. And it it's going to be potentially jarring or uncomfortable and or whatnot.
I think I really love Breath of the Wild. I think it's really great, and like that sense of epic adventure is there. You know, yeah, it's just, and I think it's probably nostalgia a little bit. It's just that I really like the format of those old ones, and I was a bit sad to see, them completely change it up. And there were a few elements like the dungeons and things where I'm like, oh, you couldn't have kept a good dungeon, like, um, yeah. There's this kind of genre again that and there's no term for it really. That Zelda on the N64 and on the GameCube or whatever was kind of doing, which was like this like action adventure games that weren't exactly platformers, but they had some kind of like element of melee combat, and you would kind of like get upgrades and things, and they'd be maybe a bit more serious in tone. And a lot of those kind of franchises died off pretty quickly, and then nobody really got it as good as Nintendo. And I'm thinking about stuff like Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, uh, Beyond Good and Evil, Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy, Star Fox Adventures, even. You know, like they're not platformers, they're not shooters, they're action adventures, I guess you would call them at the time. Uh, yeah, and like yeah, most of them died off, and then Nintendo was the only one kind of still making them with like Skyward Sword, and so it's a bit disappointing to be like, oh, okay, they're doing open world now, so um that's kind of gone. I think I like one day I really want to make one of those kind of like dungeon explory action adventure kind of things.
I hadn't really thought of that, but yeah, I can't help but agree that the Zelda 64 format, there weren't a lot of games that really followed it, or at least to my knowledge. I could be very wrong. We could both be very wrong, and we're both just blissfully unaware, or maybe not blissfully, but we're just completely unaware of this wonderful set of games that just would scratch that same itch. But you are, I think you're spot on that that was a very specific kind of game,
Mm.
and it hasn't really been done in that format. And those that did, have for whatever reason just didn't succeed. Uh, they didn't continue on.
Yeah, I almost wish like uh there was a term for it because like when people talk about Metroidvanias and they go, "Oh, I miss Metroidvanias, bring back Metroidvanias," or "This game is a Metroidvania," etc. That like there's at least shared terms and people know what we're talking about. But yeah, there was just like a few years there where there was this little genre of Zelda 64 likes or whatever that I really enjoyed, and I'm sad that kind of like they all changed directions or died off and stuff like that. Or basically, in terms of like uh, action combat games, I guess you got kind of like the Bayonetta, Devil May Cry. They kind of like went in that direction, or you got the Dark Souls stuff, and they went in that direction. And like those are cool. Um, Not specific. It's just scratching that itch. I think that's a good phrase. I've recently been playing Kina uh, and the Bridge of Spirits. I want to say the subtitle is, and that is very much. Um, it reminds me of that era of games, but it's a bit too modern. It's got a bit too many like modern things, like an upgrade tree and lock on combat and like really modern aiming controls and stuff like that. And it's a bit. I'm really enjoying it. It's really pretty and everything. It's a bit shallow in terms of like I want a really good inventory screen. That's what I really want from that game. Just
It's it's kind of like when you go to scratch the itch and you get there and then you get distracted, right? So you put your hand down, you're about to start, and you're like, "Oh, look, a pretty bird," and you
yeah,
just it's kind of it's almost there. Is I think the sentiment I'm getting from you.
yeah. It reminds me a lot of that era, and particularly like stuff like Beyond Good and Evil. Except that I feel like Beyond Good and Evil had just more to it, and maybe that's nostalgia of me going like, "Oh man, Beyond Good and Evil was a great game." Um, but yeah, I don't know. There's just I want more meat on that bone.
All very valid and uh, you know, all very valid feelings to have. I'm especially not the one to try and change that opinion because I, completely agree. I'd never actually thought about it until 5 minutes ago or what have you. But I completely agree with everything you're saying. So far be it for me to try and pose any form of a devil's advocate argument.
Have you played Kena? Or I don't know.
No, I haven't. I do not have a PS5. I believe it's only on the PS5. Um,
I think it
so
might be
no,
PS.
I have not had the playing it yet. It's on my list of things to do at some point,
Okay,
uh, but unfortunately not at this time.
no worries. Yeah, I haven't found many other people that have played it.
I've certainly read about it. I've and whatnot. It's just I haven't had the opportunity yet.
um, no, it's yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's really good.
Well,
You-
fair. I will keep that in mind. That when I get the opportunity, I'll keep an eye out for it.
Okay.
So Joseph, I want to ask, what is it that makes gaming enjoyable to you? And I think we also kind of danced around this in some way, shape, or form. But explicitly, is there something about games that that are enjoyable to you, and what is that?
Um, that's a really broad question.
Kind of is, and I apologize for that.
It's
If
it's
you'd like, I can try and make it less broad.
no, I it's changed a lot. Like I started as somebody who played games, and now I make them, and um oftentimes when I'm playing something, it's hard to turn off that kind of bit in your brain that is like, how was this put together? What have they done design wise? Um, So, but now I like enjoy really good level design, really good, um, uh, just really clever mechanics design, really good move sets and character controllers and stuff like that. Like, if a game is just kind of like instinctively very, very fun to play, I really, really enjoy that. Um, yeah, and I don't know, just like a great soundtrack, great art, great environment art, fun characters. Yeah, that if something has some combination of all of that, like, I really, really respond to it.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. All that makes perfect sense. And hopefully there's uh hopefully games continue to scratch that itch for you. And I know that's a that's a very vague, but it's such a broad amount of games. I'm very confident that there's always going to be games that you'll enjoy if those are the things that are going to do it for you, because it's we're only because as a lot of people say, gaming is relatively young, in the grand scheme of things in terms of art forms. But like as companies, as studios are figuring out how to do better games, or not, I don't want to say better games, as they're honing the art form. That's the way to put it. I'm confident that there's just going to be more of those things that check off those boxes for you because the more studios that are doing it seriously or earnestly, not to say that other studios aren't when they're not trying to make big art kind of games or what have you, but the more that that is happening, the more I think we're going to see a fabulous,
Mm,
better stories, better music, better all of this. And I say that, and I realize immediately that that's kind of arrogant to say because like you look back at some of the older games and that they had absolutely fantastic audio as well. Like Chrono Trigger, for example, for me is like the epitome of perfect game music, right?
yeah,
So like I say that, yeah, completely disregarding everything in the past, but I'm just meaning, you know, we're gonna see less of those one-offs, and I look forward to that because if those are the things you enjoy, I'm sure at some point in time you're gonna have nothing but games that you're gonna be able to really enjoy.
yeah. I definitely no, no, I definitely think that way. I disagree a little bit that that it's kind of like a things are always getting better kind of thing, or I think that's maybe kind of like looking at it a bit like a tech problem where it's like we're just going to keep iterating. I think there's something to be said for like art doesn't work like that. And just like good creative stuff is hard to kind of pinpoint where it comes from. And particularly, yeah, at the minute, I think the games that I'm really enjoying that are coming out are like indie titles where um, people are, like I said, making stuff that has a start and a finish, and good controls and good characters or whatever. And yeah, I kind of bounce off a lot of the more higher budget, big tech games these days because yeah.
And definitely, I so thank you for that about the comment for art. That's I'm not going to argue with that at all for a various amount of reasons. And mainly because I'm not qualified to argue or to even really discuss it further. But thank you for the way you phrase that because you're correct. I was looking at it from a tech point of view,
Mm,
and art doesn't work like that. Music doesn't work like that, right? So thank you for that. That's something I will do my best to keep in mind for the future. Uh, but when it comes to indie games, I agree completely. I personally find it easier for me to get hooked on an indie game, because to me, I see a lot of indie games coming out and developers or teams or what have you are more willing might be the wrong word, but you're going to see things that you might not see a bigger studio try, only
mm,
because they have um, they have they have like stock, or not stock, but like they have like the board of directors, and they have all this stuff that is so going to be focused on what is going to sell millions and millions of copies of and make them millions and millions of dollars and whatnot,
Mm,
capitalism and all that stuff. Whereas indie studios will, from my understanding, typically be more focused on making what they want to make, or smaller studios or what have you.
yeah,
And
I think it's just it. Sorry to interrupt, but I think
no, no worries.
it's about risk. You know, it's about, if you are Ubisoft and you have, millions and millions and millions of pounds, or dollars, or whatever they, euros. Um, you need to make a game on that budget level that is going to appeal to the most number of people as possible, right? And so you get stuff that is kind of not lowest common denominator. That's not kind of what I mean. What I mean is like that, um, that just has just this enormous broad appeal, and where a lot of the rougher edges have sanded off, and gameplay systems and gameplay mechanics have all had solutions. Like, the best way for the player to upgrade their abilities is these upgrade trees. The best way for a crafting system to work is, the menu looks like this looks like that. Um, that's the kind of incentive they've got there. I think for indie teams, just because there's a lot less money on the line, they're able to make stuff that's like, um, this is just going to appeal to these kinds of people. And if you don't like that, then you don't buy the game, right? And there's less capital on the line. I think it's like interesting, and something I thought about, making Grapple Dog is like, who is the market for this game? Is it like people that like platformers, or whatever? Um, how big is that? You know, um, but I know that as a developer, I'm not spending hundreds of millions of dollars like to make this silly game about a cartoon dog. Like, the risk, versus reward is a kind of different calculation.
Definitely. And I do want to comment, because you had said about the market for Grapple Dog, and I will say, I played the demo. I really enjoyed the demo. I really enjoyed the concept.
Thank
And
you.
the thing that, and I don't know if this is going to be a good thing that I say or not to you, but the thing that made me go, oh, this is interesting, was because I really enjoyed Bionic Commando on the Game Boy Color when I was younger,
Yeah.
and I like the games that utilize the, I'm gonna say gimmick, feature that utilize the feature of having just a hook that you swing on. I've never been able to figure out why. It's just I enjoyed playing Bionic Commando so much that when I saw Grapple Dog have that hook, I was like, oh, okay, I'm on board. And that, obviously there is a myriad of other things. There's the environments, the levels are well versed. They're not well versed, but well, they're unique levels. They are, everything that's going on is presented nicely. I like the game as a whole package, but the thing that made me actively go, oh, I'm going to try this, was the grapple. And like I said, I played the demo. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I look forward to it coming out in the future. To see what else is there. It already looks like, and this I'm not good enough for this, but it already looks like there is a buttoning, or a budding speed run or trial community, because it looks like right from the get go you knew that was going to be a thing, and already have a time trial mode put in there, which is fantastic, because I myself was trying to go fast, but fast in the sense of knowing I was just going fast, not like some people where they found all these little shortcuts, or whatever the proper term in the community is, where like they swing one way, hit the ground, bounce off the wall, and skip
Yeah.
half the level in a matter of 2 seconds instead of 2 minutes or what have you.
Really wild.
Um,
It's really wild seeing some of the bugs and stuff.
but but yeah, no. So like for me, it was the hook. You know, my significant other, for her it was the dog. So you know, I'm only saying all this because, you know, to try and help answer the question of the appeal for you, I guess. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. I mean, yeah, I think very early on, I kind of like, uh, I knew I wanted the kind of whatever the game it was because I was prototyping a lot of stuff at the time. I was like, I need this game to kind of like, if you see a 30-second, 10-second gameplay clip of it, people understand what is happening on the screen. Um, and so it's yeah, that's why the kind of grapple mechanic like fit that criteria for me. You know, so it's really great to hear that that like works in a way that people like turn their head and go like, oh, a grappling hook.
you know, and for me especially, it really was that simple. It really was the little like the little animal part of my brain just, "Oh, grappling hook, okay," and that was it. You know, like I said, I was immediately sold on wanting to try it because of the grappling hook. I am a very simple man, Joseph. I want to be very clear on that.
Well, people just love grappling hooks. They're really cool. I mean, they're like they promise a set of very interesting physical interactions, and that's why I think people just keep coming back to them and people keep putting them in games. Yeah, and it's been interesting to like hear um, lots of people give their thoughts on like, um, oh well, you must have been thinking about Bionic Commando, or like, oh, you must have played Worms Armageddon or whatever. And I actually like I haven't played either of those things. I played Bionic Commando Rearmed on the Xbox 360. That's the extent of. Oh, and I played the gritty reboot of Bionic Commando. Uh, that's the extent of my knowledge. Yeah, I just think grappling hooks are cool. Like everybody thinks grappling hooks are cool.
You know, 100%. Like I don't think many people will disagree with the grappling hooks are cool a viewpoint. You know, like I remember when I was younger, the Ninja Turtles were on TV, or in your case, the Hero Turtles or whatever. Um, for
I
those that don't know, they named it weird in the UK. I don't know. Um, but like, you know, they use grappling hooks, and I was primarily a Turtles kid. I'm 33 at this point. Pretty sure I'm 33 at this point. Um, but like, you know, the Turtles existed, and ninjas were a huge thing. And you know,
Mm,
when I was in high school, the weird meme, I guess, of ninjas versus pirates were a huge thing. So, you know, grappling hooks because the ninjas came back. Like, what I'm really trying to say is there hasn't been a point in my life where it seems like grappling hooks were not a cool thing. Like you said, you know, they've
mm.
always existed, and I'm fairly certain they will always exist, continuing, and they will always be something that everyone thinks is cool because it's a grappling hook.
Yeah, I mean they're great. I'm trying to think. I was a Ninja Turtles kid as well. Um, but I don't think that I don't necessarily have any kind of like long-standing fascination with grappling hooks. I'm trying to think if it came from anywhere, and I don't think so. I'm glad to hear that it started the love affair with grappling hooks started with the Ninja Turtles though.
A lot of things in my life had started with the Ninja Turtles. I'm not going to lie. I'm like I said, I was the prime age market for that cartoon, and it has had, well, the series in general has had just way too many profound impacts on my life that, similar to Zelda and such, I look back on and go, why is this a thing? Like, oh, okay, it's because of Michelangelo, or it's Donatello, or you know, what have you. Um, you know, there's just way too many things in my life that I look back on and say, oh, okay, it's a Turtles thing, and just move on.
You're not
Um,
you're not climbing down into the sewer, are you? Because I mean that's pretty gross.
I have not tried that since I was a young child. Thank you very much. That attempt did not last very long. I was grabbed very quickly, but
Oh
you
dear.
know, that attempt did not. has not persisted through my life. Um, I will say though, if I ever have children, I am very much concerned about their attempts because I feel that's a very valid concern. Um, but no, I have not personally since for at least I want to say 28 years.
Good to know.
Now, Joseph, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. However, if there's anything else you wanted to discuss, a cool game, more about what you're doing, or something you feel more people should just be more aware of, the floor is yours. As well, please let everyone know where they can find more information about you, and I will also be including that information in the episode description too.
Oh, ooh, wow. I've got the floor. Um, hmm. um, I just realized we didn't talk really about any platformers.
No, we didn't. So, if you would like to talk about some platformers for, right now, let's get into it.
About platformers. Okay. Let's trade. What's your favorite platformer?
So my favorite platformer for a bunch of different reasons, but it's Mario Brothers 3 for me, and it's
Three.
personally because uh it's what more or less has defined the Mario structure since then. The overworld map, the power-ups, the a lot of core functionality that has existed or been changed or what have you uh, for the last 30 plus years. Mario 3 has been out for over 30 years now. So
Yeah,
it's,
I like Mario 3, but I'm more of a Mario World guy. I think I like all the secret exits and what. Does 3 have secret exits?
so 3 has a small number of secret kind of exits that you could do. There was a few that got you flutes that you could use in World 1 that you could jump around. Um,
Yeah,
and
I liked World. I just like the way World controls a bit more, and I like the cape, and I like the levels in that one were kind of like. And there's actually a lot of Grapple Dog in there, if when I think about it, in terms of I like that you had to use the cape to kind of like explore all over the level, and there were like secrets. I did like Mario Brothers 3, but yeah, it's more of a kind of like obstacle coursey kind of thing. And I guess if you want like pure Mario, that's the thing. But I always like World a little bit more.
And that's very fair. Like Mario World is a fantastic game. I'm not gonna ever deny that.
Mm.
Because everything like you said, it was typically it was more colorful because it came out on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Uh, it had uh it had a lot of iterated ideas honed a little differently than Mario Brothers 3. It had like the overworld map, like you said. It had the secret exits where you got Star Road. If you really wanted the challenge, um I forget the name of that the extra hard levels that if you beat them, you got all the Koopas turned into Mario heads, which
Oh,
was
yeah.
always an interesting thing to terrify children with.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something about the way that a game controls that I just really um what's the right phrase for it? It just really excites me when there's like a really tight feeling control scheme. And I don't know, like if I close my eyes, I can feel playing Super Mario World right now. Um, I just love the way it plays. And then, yeah, I don't know. With Super Mario Brothers 3, it just always feels a bit like the acceleration is weird. I don't know. I don't know how to exactly. I'd have to actually go and take some notes to tell you why. I just don't like it as much.
And that's very fair, and I also think it's probably very accurate and fair to say that um, without some of the, I'm going to say stumbling blocks that Mario 3 may have had,
Mm.
that Mario World would not have learned from, right?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
don't, so I think I agree completely that, it's, always was an iterative process for Nintendo for the momentum for the game feel for how characters controlled, and that in Mario World, I agree completely. It was very tight. It worked the way you wanted it to. It was, I want to say it was very finely polished, very honed, and it's yeah, like I said, I won't ever disagree with the idea that Mario World is a fantastic game. I think it was, it's absolutely fantastic, and glad to hear that that also had uh, impact on how you approached Grapple Dog, like the levels or design elements or what have you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, uh, yeah. Definitely the idea of kind of like not just an obstacle course, but you kind of like explore around and you find secrets and stuff like that. That's definitely uh yeah, definitely really influential. I'm trying to think of like what my favorite platformer is. I know I asked you, but
Well, I was going to follow up with that for you. So,
yeah,
do you have a favorite platformer that you can think of?
there's so many. I'm gonna publish when I finally actually release this game. I'm gonna publish like every platform I played because I've played about like during the development of Grapple Dog, I've played like 50 or 60. Like
Hmm.
I've played quite a lot. I played so many. I think like I love Super Mario Odyssey. I know that's like one of the more recent ones, but that it to me is top tier platforming. That is just it controls so beautifully, and there's so much love and care and attention put into every little element of it, and just these great environments and this great soundtrack. I just love that game to bits. Um, that's kind of a 3D platformer. I think. Oof, 2D platformers. Um, I really love. Um, I really love the trying to remember the name of it. Sorry, there's a dog. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. Have you ever played that? I really love that one. Kirby Canvas Curse. I love. I'm trying. I don't know. I love so many platformers. I love the more recent Rayman games. Oh, and I recently played which might be top five platformers ever. Donkey Kong Country 2. That game is just blows my mind. It's incredible.
I When you say you're meaning the Super Nintendo one?
Yeah, the Super Nintendo one.
Okay.
Like
Yes,
I
and
played that growing up, and then I only played it recently on the Switch thing, and I was like, wow.
yes, so yeah, the Donkey Kong Country games uh I I absolutely loved as a child. For me a lot of different reasons similar to Mario 3, but uh the I'm trying to think of the word. The progression might be the wrong word. Um, the evolution of the gameplay, the levels, the not philosoph philosophy, the approach, or like just the reasoning behind everything. Like
Mm,
I liked that it got more wild and whimsical, and I say that in the sense of if you look at Donkey Kong Country 1, it
yeah.
was, the level designs were not, they weren't bad, they were great. There was a lot of interesting little shortcuts, secrets, and what have you, but they were all very much, it's a jungle, oh, it's some Aztec ruins or what have you, oh, it's a factory, etc., etc., etc. And then you go to 2, and it's like a poison swamp, a sunken ship, a weird roller coaster amusement park, a weird level of thorns that you have to always navigate. Like it was just
There's there's
the
there's really great environments in that game, and there's a real kind of like and it's something I think about as I have done backgrounds for Grapple Dog. It's just there's this real commitment to selling stuff, like just that opening on the boat. When it kind of like is in the soundtrack, and then the kind of like camera sways, and like they're really like selling. You are in this environment, and there's a lot of little touches like that in that game that just really sell. I'm thinking of also like some of the underwater levels have that just that amazing transparent water effect, and just oh, it's just so good that game.
Yes, yeah. Like I said, I think that in that entire series was fantastic, and the push from them to not just make the push from Rare, I should say, not from them, but the
Yeah,
push from Rare to not just make a sequel. And I say that in the sense of, like you'll have some games where the sequel is just new levels, more or less.
yeah,
In today's world, it would just be considered DLC, right? Just a new level pack, a set of levels, or what have you. But like, the difference between them are, you know, a whole bunch of mechanic changes, a whole bunch of upgrades. Um, technical upgrades, I should say, not upgrades. But like,
yeah.
you have the new character for each one, like a new character comes along. But like every like it was it's weird to say it this way because, a lot of people can also see just new level games as this. But in my mind, the progression from one, two, three, each one of them were proper, like fully proper sequels. They were each one 100% stood on their own. I don't think anyone would look at three and go, "Oh, well, I already had one," And
Yeah.
I say this carefully because I really like these games. But if you look at Mega Man games, you look at that
Oh
kind of stuff. Realistically, at the end of the day, it's you got I think it was in two, you got the slide dash, and then eventually rush. But
I think
the
it's
the
I think it's a really interesting. I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. If you,
no, no worries.
I think it's something I think about a lot, right? In terms of like I know, I just like at the beginning of the episode we got very deep, and I said, games are art, they're creative, but they're also software, right? And that's like where a lot of the weird contradictions in making them and talking about them come in. And I think about this a lot in terms of um, sequels that iterate, right, can be like really good. And in fact, some series, a lot of platformer series, the games that I go like, no, that is the absolute standout one. I usually maybe like the second or the third, um, when it's like they know how to make that kind of game. They know
Yeah,
what went wrong the first time. They are kind of taking that on and taking all that kind of institutional knowledge and applying it to like the next one, right? And like just to give examples, like I would say Sonic 2 is like way better than Sonic 1. Donkey Kong Country 2, I'd argue like Crash Bandicoot 2. Um, I mean, even stuff, even like we were just talking about Mario Brothers 3. Like you can clearly see it's like this iteration and this kind of like this point where they hit their groove. Like that's really exciting to me when you kind of go like, oh man, they really knocked it out of the park this time. And that yeah, that's how I feel when I played Donkey Kong Country 2, just going from one to that, and it's just like yeah, they nailed it.
exactly. And like I said, I really enjoyed the Mega Man series. So like I wasn't speaking ill of that approach, but it's kind of what you were saying is they took everything, iterated on it, and they almost make a new game, right? Like it's the skeleton is still there. And like you also said, from like a software standpoint, I completely understand wanting to try and reuse as much as what you can because it keeps development down, like the cost down. You can get it out faster, but you can keep the cost down. The footprint is lower.
Yeah,
So like in no way am I going to say, "Oh, that's stupid." Like why would anyone do that? Because well, you know, as much as as much as you want new stuff, you got to understand people are going to do what they have to do to try and save a little bit of money because time is money. And why remake the wheel when you have a wheel, right?
yeah,
And like I think it says a lot to have a game that is able to successfully, more or less, make a brand new game from itself every time, in the same way that it's able to say, something like Mega Man, where it's able to continuously deliver a
Yeah,
stellar,
and
enjoyment feel every time, despite the fact that it's arguably more of the same. And I think in
I would say that, like, my I don't know what your opinion of each individual Mega Man game, because there's a lot of them, but
there are, yes.
I definitely think you see that arc though, where it's like the first game has a couple of like rougher edges that by like Mega Man 2 or 3, like to me 2 and 3 are the standouts, and it's like from there it's kind of diminishing returns where it's like, okay, all right, yeah, you in another one.
Yeah,
uh,
no, 100%, because the charge shot was introduced, the sliding dash was introduced, rush was introduced. I don't remember the order of those coming out, but I think by 3 all of that was established.
mm,
But yeah, like I don't mean to speak ill and say, oh no, they're just like it's Mega Man 2 is Mega Man 1 with new levels and 3 is 2 with new levels and all that. Because no, you're 100% correct. There was the rough edges were polished out. They got in there. They doubled down on the things that were really good, introduced some new things. Um, but I'm more meaning that, like, if you compare like a Mega Man 2 and 3 to like Donkey Kong Country 2 and
yeah,
3, it's it's a very different approach. Both are completely valid approaches. Like I want to say that very clearly. I like I said, I really enjoy the Mega Man series, but like you knew what you were getting with Mega Man. With Donkey Kong Country, for me, it was a wild ride because I thought I was getting more of Donkey Kong Country, and instead I got effectively this brand new, like this actual brand new game with a whole new character who doesn't play the same at all, and like just all of these new,
yeah,
uh, like just the new everything. Um, and like I
yeah,
said, I think both are very valid. I think both have 100% have a place at that table. I'm going to always buy like I'm always going to want to play and buy a new Mega Man game, just in the same way that I would want to buy like Donkey Kong Country 4 if it was.
yeah. You're really scared of these Mega Man fans coming for you.
It's
if you
it's
want,
the it's
if
the
you
one
want,
that I'm clinging to because it's the series that's just in my head. I haven't played others
I'll
that
put my
iterate
foot
the same
down and
way.
say, I'll put my foot down and say, yeah, some of those later NES titles are pretty forgettable, and I struggle to tell them apart.
I'm not gonna lie. I won't lie about this. I don't remember anything between 3 and 2 and 5, I'm gonna say. I remember whenever the slide dash and the charge shot came, and then up until 6, I have no memory of.
Okay.
And then from there on, including the new ones, I have nothing to say until X. And that even includes like Mega Man 10 and 11 or what have you.
I've played 2 and 3. No, I played 1, 2, and 3. And then I played 4, and then yeah, I think it's like yeah, that it was a bit too samey. I felt like I'd had enough Mega Man, um, and and I don't know, it just didn't feel as good. And I was like, if I want to play more Mega Man in the future, I'll just play 2 because that's the best one in my estimation. Yeah, I never really explored it beyond that.
And that's like I said, I was only using Mega Man because it was the easiest example for me to go back to.
I get
Um,
you. I get you. I think it's really tempting on like sequels to just kind of yeah do a level pack or whatever. And sometimes it's cool to kind of like oh more of this game that I like. Yeah, but there is something definitely for like seeing a team hit their creative stride, and kind of like go from here's this game with some great ideas that's kind of rough, and then you know the second one is just like wow they've done an incredible job here. Um, yeah, that's that. Yeah, I love Donkey Kong Country too.
yeah, thank you. I was gonna say, how do we even get on that tangent? um, but yes. So
um, so that was me having the floor.
so so yeah, Joseph. If there wasn't anything else you wanted to discuss,
I do just want to say last thing. Yeah, Grapple Dog is coming soon. I can't be more specific than that at the moment, but um, if you could wishlist the game on Steam, that would be really helpful. It really helps out small developers. Those numbers help with the Steam algorithm and all that sort of nonsense. Um, so yeah, I'd really, really appreciate that. And thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. Like I said, thank you so much for making the time and agreeing to join me for this. I will definitely include the Steam page in the episode description and all of that, so people can find
Oh,
your game, as well as your Twitter, so people can find more information about you.
awesome.
But yeah, if there's nothing else you wanted to discuss, Joseph, I'll let you get on with your day.
I'm good. I'm good.
Awesome, awesome. So thanks again to our guest Joseph for making time to have this conversation with me, and thank you for joining us on the Red Tunic podcast, as well as special thanks to Ronald Jenkins for the use of music from the title track from Road Steep. And if you like this podcast and want to support it and help it grow, please subscribe or follow me on Twitter at Red Tunic Podcast to receive the latest episodes and news, and be sure to share if those you think might enjoy it. Thanks, and until next time.